brand new beginning. Thank the Lord for it. I like the book of Numbers. Again, with Numbers, he's just getting them ready to go. Well, they've spent a lot of time, a lot of preparation. But you know, it takes a lot of preparation in life. For you and I to be ready to go, be ready to be used, it takes work. It takes hard work, dedication. The Apostle Paul made the statement that God found him faithful, counted him faithful, and put him into the ministry. I don't think God would have ever used him if he was an unfaithful individual. God doesn't do that. So we find here he's getting them ready. He's just making some last things here in the book of Numbers. He had to give them the law, he had to give them the moral law, the civil law, the ceremonial law, set up the Aaronic priesthood. He set up the Levitical priesthood. They built the tabernacle, all the specifications. He got the Levites ready to disassemble it, right? Take it down very quickly and move it when that cloud or that pillar of fire decided to move. And that's day or night. I remember one time in the military, we had marched all day. You know what I'm talking about? Dragging our tracks out. I'm talking about full pack weapons. Everything marched all day at about dawn. We set up camp. We set up camp. Took out the sea rations, ate a little bit of sea rations, and got ready for bed. And they said break camp. And they marched just about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Before they let us set up again. That time we didn't care about sea rations, we didn't care about anything. We were looking for a place to lay down. So we find here that they've got to be ready to go. That's what he's doing here. Now, you get chapter number 8, that's where we'll start this morning. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, go back to chapter number 7 and verse number 89. The Bible said that when Moses was gone into the tabernacle of the congregation to speak with him. Now, Moses went back. Now we find that God is speaking to Moses right there. Right? He's speaking to Moses in that tabernacle. Notice what he said. Then he heard the voice of one speaking with him from off the mercy seat that was on the ark of the testimony, from between the 2 cherubims, and he spake unto him, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying. Now, what did he say when he went in? First time he goes in there, okay? Everything's set up. This tent is a very heavy tent. It's got coverings, several different coverings over the top of it. It's very, very heavy, and it goes back into this tent, and without the blood goes through that veil, in front of that tabernacle, in front of that mercy seat. All right, God. What God say with it? Now, this is what God told him. Speak unto Aaron, and say unto him, when thou lightest the lamps, the 7 lamps, and shall give light over against the candlestick, and Aaron did so. You know what that tells me? When Moses went in pitch blackness. There was no light in there. Boy, you talk about tents being dark. This thing let no outside light into that thing at all. I could see him just about fumbling in, trying not to fall over stuff and get back in there where he talked to God. God said, now, when you come in here now, we're going to have to light this place. If you want God to talk to you, you've got to be in the light. So God's going to give them a specific order, the first thing that Aaron and them are going to do. And by the way, this is part of what they do. You need to realize that the Levites were not allowed inside of the tent. They worked out in the tabernacle of the congregation, out in the open place with the brazen altar and the sacrifices, and took care of all the work out there. The only ones allowed into here were those of Aaronic priesthood. They had to be in the line, all right? So that's who came in here. So he told Aaron, you go light the lamp, and Aaron did so. Look at verse number 3. He lighted the lamp, therefore, over against the candlestick as the Lord commanded Moses. So he went over and he lit this thing up, and for the first time inside of that tabernacle, you got light. That candelabrum, boy, the menorah, beautiful type of Jesus Christ. I am the light of the world. And then the Bible said we're to light our individual lights. Let your light so shine among men that see good works, glorify your Father which is in heaven. But he told them, when you light that light, you don't hide it under a bushel or under a bed, you put it on a what? Candlestick, all right? What's a candlestick? Type of the church. Go to Revelation, chapter number 2, chapter number 1, you find the candle, the 7 candlesticks were the 7 churches of Asia Minor. So what happens this morning, as you come in, everything gets lighter. You didn't know that, did you? You come in one at a time, everything gets lighter in here. Why? We're adding those lights together. So that's what they did with the menorah. So now he would no longer approach God in absolute darkness. He wouldn't do that any longer. Now, from that point on, when Aaron came in, he had to that place, he had to bring a censer with coals on it, which gave light, and put incense on them. When he came in on the Day of Atonement, he had to have that censer in his hand and wave that censer and that incense before God when he made the atonement. But we find Aaron did so. Verse number 3, he lit it as he was commanded. Verse 4, this work of the candlestick was of beaten gold. That's interesting. We'll look at that. Unto the shaft thereof, unto the flowers thereof was beaten work, according unto the pattern which the Lord had showed Moses, so it made the candlestick. I said the candlestick itself is a type of Christ. Gold is deity, and it had to be beaten out. Gold is very malleable. The better the gold, the more pure the gold, the softer the gold is. They used to take gold coins and put them in their mouth and bite them. You ever see anybody check them that way? My dad had a wedding band that's 24 karat gold. Every time you turn around, he was mashing it against his finger or something. Now, mine's 14 karat, and I actually like 10 karat better. So we find that gold is very malleable, and it's a type of Christ. Christ was beaten. Christ's body was virtually destroyed by his enemy. When he died on that cross, Isaiah said it this way, his visage was marred more than any man. There's never been a man whose face was better the way Christ was. The Bible said he was beaten by the Roman soldiers. These soldiers were the Praetorian Guard. They were what we'd call the special forces of the day, the Navy SEALs or the Green Berets. These men were professional killers, and they beat him until his feet. I'm talking about beaten gold. So when he lit this thing up, then you see that candlestick, that it was a beaten gold according to the pattern God made. Beautiful type of Christ. Why? You got to go through Christ. Then you go through the veil, which is the type of his flesh, the candlestick and the table of showbread or fellowship and light, and you go through that, and you go in to see God, and that's where he spake. Verse number 5, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, now you're going to talk to him in the light for a little while. You got to have the light before you can talk to him. Take the Levites from among the children of Israel and cleanse them. Now he's going to deal again with the Levitical tribe. He's already broken them up. You had Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Those are the 3 branches. The leaders, you go all the way back to Genesis chapter number 48. I think it is where he spoke to them where they went down into Egypt and he spoke of them. But in that genealogy, you find these were the 3 sons of Levi. So he set them up already, but they're not ready to work. Reason being, they haven't been cleansed and haven't been anointed and offered for first. So he said, you take them in verse number 6 and cleanse them. And thus shalt ye do unto them to cleanse them, sprinkle water of purifying upon them. Now what they did, they took what they called holy water, not in a Roman Catholic sense, but they've got the laver set up. Some people just show a round laver, some show it 3 tiers because of running water. As it went from one tier to the other, they put the water in and they washed in that clean water. So they took that water from off the laver. That's where the high priest had to wash before they went into the tabernacle. It was made out of the looking glasses of the women. actually a very beautiful thing made of brass. Brass is judgment in the Bible. The looking glasses is, you look at, they didn't have mirrors of the way we had. They had highly polished brass to where they could see their face in that. And they took these and they made them. So when the priest was cleansed, he saw himself as he was. He had no thought that he was above anybody or anything else. He saw who he was. And they washed there at that laver before they went in. So he said this, he sprinkled with a water purifying upon them, and then let them shave all their flesh. They had to completely shave their flesh. Not one hair could be not shaven. That was for cleanliness' sake, and they just took them and they shaved them completely and let them wash their clothes and so make themselves clean. We used to call that squeaky clean. We used to have to bathe the boys and some of the grandchildren when they were small. Somebody said, "You get them clean." I said, "They're squeaky clean." Man, they had to be cleansed and they had to be clean. Then, verse number 8, then let them take a young bullock with his meat offering, even fine flour mingled with oil, and take another young bullock shalt thou take for a sin offering. Now, first thing he did, they offered two offerings, and he'll deal with them a little bit more here. One, they took what's called a meat offering. That meat offering is an offering of thanksgiving, giving to God thanks. One, that God was going to give them opportunity to serve. You know, I think that we need to be thankful for the areas where we can serve. Some people look at it as a drudgery. It ought not be a drudgery. It ought to be a joy. Thank God we get to serve God. So they offered one. They offered the thanksgiving. One, for the joy of service. But for the second thing that they gave this for was that they're going to dedicate. These Levites are the first fruits. Instead of the firstborn son, God took the Levites. He took the tribe. So they're the first fruits. So they're going to give the first fruits now to God, but they're also going to give to Aaron. Now notice what he said. He said, you take them and offer them one, a meat offering, and then you take the bullock for a sin offering. These were men. With all of their flaws, with all of their failings and shortcomings, these were just men that God chose to serve him in a certain way. So he had to take care of his sin first. I have to take care of my sin before I can pray for yours. I'm the first one I pray for in the morning. I'm sorry, folks. That's just the way it works. I pray for me first, and then I start down the line. I pray for Barbara, I pray for children and grandchildren, and I start going down that line, just praying for them, all right? The evangelist made a statement. He said, just pray for thorns in the nest. I thought that was good. You don't ever want children that are out of the will of God to get comfortable. You want to pray for their comfort. You don't want to pray for their death or heavy chastisement. But at the same time, you don't want them to get comfortable where they are. You just pray God just stick a few thorns in there. See, when that eagle built a nest, it built a nest with a lot of things, and a lot of the makeup were thorns. And that eagle would pluck her own feathers and take other things and would put an inside mat inside of that to make it comfortable for those little fledglings. But when it was time for them to leave, she'd start pulling that stuff out. Now they felt the thorns instead of the comfort of that nest, but all it was time for them to go. So we find here that he said, you need to offer a meat offering, a thanksgiving offering, and then a sin offering. Look at verse 9, and thou shalt bring the Levites before the tabernacle of the congregation. Boy, what an assembly that was. And thou shalt gather together the whole assembly of the children of Israel together. One, the Levites, 30-something, I think around 32,000 males that they counted as in the tribe of Levi. That's not women and children. That's plus their families there, and then the whole congregation of Israel around it. You're talking about 3.5 million people. You ever seen pictures of Washington, D.C. at the mall when they had the, what they call million-man marches and everything? Oh, watch that thing, just absolutely packed as far as you could see. That's 1 million. We're talking about 3.5 million minimum of these people. We're talking about a huge amount that brought them all together because they're going to offer these Levites. He said in verse number 10, thou shalt bring the Levites before the Lord, and the children of Israel shall put their hands upon the Levites. Turn 2 pages. What's that? Sign of approval. We lay hands on men when we ordain men into the ministry. We lay hands on them. We go by and put our hands on them and pray over them. That goes back to Acts chapter number 13 when they ordained Paul and Silas and sent them to the Gentiles. The Bible said that when they laid hands on them and they fasted, laid hands on them, and they prayed over these men. So they were putting not only, God's already put his divine approval on them. He chose the tribe. Now they're putting their hands on them that these people are going to do something. What the Old Testament priesthood, it represented man to God. That's what they were going to be doing. They were going to be working in that aspect. Even though Aaron was the one that was going to be the high priest, these were Levitical priests that did the work of the tabernacle, the congregation, and now they're going to get them ready. And he said that, get back on the right page. And Aaron shall offer the Levites, verse 11, before the Lord for an offering of the children of Israel, that they may execute the service of the Lord. Verse 12, and the Levites shall lay their hands upon the heads of the bullocks. Now they're offering for sin, but they've got to personally lay their hands upon the bullocks upon the head. That's not really a transfer of sin, but it's a type. Right? That bullock could never become sin for them. Christ became sin for us. That bullock was a type of the sin. So what they did, they identified their sinfulness with the sacrifice of atonement. That's what they did every year. Eventually the Jews got away with that, away from that. I think when they came back after Nebuchadnezzar, things went pretty well after a while. Nehemiah built the walls, Ezra built the temple. When the foundation was laid, man, they just wept. They laid it right on top of where Solomon's was. And I believe that's where the final temple is going to be. But at the same time, we find here that they are identifying themselves with sin and with the offering for sin. He said they lay their hands upon the heads. Verse number 12, thou shalt offer the one for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering. There were 2 bullocks there. One was a sin offering. That sin offering was, the blood was shed, that blood was kept. The other one was a burnt offering. It's an offering of consecration to where they totally consume it upon the fire that's on that altar. When they burn it, there's nothing left. They just burn it, everything fell through the grates of that fire. Now, a lot of people don't know that the first time that they made soap, it came from the tabernacle. You took the ashes of the wood of the fire and you took the grease that fell from these sacrifices, and that's what they made their first soap out of for cleansing. So they actually used that in that matter. But he said here that they're going to make an atonement for the Levites. Verse 13, thou shalt set the Levites before Aaron, before his sons, and offer them for an offering unto the Lord. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to give the Levites, the Levitical tribe, to Aaron and his sons. That tells you that Moses is not over them now. They're coming unto Aaron. They're going to do the work. They're going to do all the outward work. Aaron and his sons will be the ones that work inside of the tabernacle itself, and then they'll work outside, in the outside of the compound. If you go back and look at the temples, the last one built was Zerubbabel's temple. That was built when Israel went back and built that temple. But you look at the structure of that, you look it up online. When you came into the actual temple site, it's walled all the way around. You came into what's called the court of the Gentiles. The proselytes, the Gentile proselytes who have converted over to Judaism, who come in to that particular part. And then the second one was called the court of the women. The women could come into the second court, but not the third court. And then the third court was actually the court of the men itself. So there's a lot of space, a lot of work to be done out there with these, and that's what he set them aside to do. They're going to do the service. So what he did, they gave them to Aaron, and before Aaron and his son. Look at verse 14. Thus shalt thou separate the Levites from the children of Israel, and the Levites shall be mine. Now, he's given them to Aaron and them to you, but God said they're mine. So they're going to come under his hand from that point on. Verse 15, and after that shall the Levites go in to do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Thou shalt cleanse them and offer them for an offering. So they're going to offer them. They're cleansed. They're going to take them now inside of the outer compound. They're going to take them through the door for the first time. See, nobody's been in there since they set it up. Just the high priest and his family, Moses, the only one's been on the inside. So what they're doing, now they're going in, they're going to offer first at that brazen altar. They're going to offer there. Then they'll do the ultimate cleansing again. But he said they're going to go in and they're going to give them for an offering. Verse 16, for they are wholly given unto me from among the children of Israel. Instead of such as open every womb, even instead of the firstborn of all the children of Israel, have I taken them unto me. Verse 17, for all the firstborn of the children of Israel are mine, both man and beast. On the day that I smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified them for myself. So now he's going to take the Levites in their place. Verse 18, I've taken the Levites for all the firstborn of the children of Israel. You say, why? Because firstborns were important to families. God understood that. Now you can take the secondborn and he can become the patriarch at that time. But you've got to be careful with losing your youth in so many ways. I think about the young people today. Boy, how important it is for these children to stay in the families. And in the patriarchs, they couldn't take their strength away from these families. That's what you did. You took that firstborn son, you took the strength away. Now you've got to have the secondborn come in. He'll never replace that firstborn. There's something about the firstborn in the days of the patriarchs. They were of a necessity to the families itself. So he said, all the firstborn of children are mine. Now, verse number 19, and I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and to his son. I bet they said, thank God for that. Got 3.5 million people going to be offering. Wonder how many sinned every day. All of them sinned. Can you imagine? I mean, just imagine the amount of offering and the amount of animals that were slaughtered day after day. It took thousands of these priests to take care of that thing. Remember the Levites. Now, just about 8,000 worked at a time, but you've got 8,000 men in there working, trying to keep this thing up. There was no way that the high priest could have ever done that. Him and his sons, he had 3 sons, or 4 sons, I'm sorry, he had 4 sons, but they could never have done that work, so thank God for that. And I believe you find the structure even of the church today. The pastor can't do everything. Matter of fact, he's not intended to do everything. Not his job to do everything, all right? And then you've got deacons, which are servants to the church. But then you've got everybody in there has their place and their job in some kind of work. Hey, find something to do at church on a regular basis. Just come up and say, hey, I'll take care of that. You don't have to worry about that anymore. I'll take care of that. I'll take care of that. I thank God for the people that work in the church. But sometimes they get overloaded. They've got jobs, and then sometimes they've got to help each other out with the cleaning, take somebody else's place, and we've got the houses over here got to be taken care of, the prophet chamber got to be taken care of, just all types of things. Find something that you can do. It won't work you to death. Somebody said one person can do it all, or all can do a job of peace, and when they do that, it makes it so much easier when everybody has their particular thing. And that's what he's doing here. He's setting them up to where they're going to do that work. So he gave them as a gift to Abraham. He didn't say they were a gift to me. He said, I own them. He said that they're going to be a gift. Now, you got to be careful how you treat your gift. There's no saying that you can work a good horse to death. You ever heard that? You say, well, why do they work a good horse to death? Because most people can't be trusted to do a job, so you always have to find the person that you can trust to get it done. When I was a face boss in mines down there, I can only see one or two people at a time. Everybody's at different entries or tunnels, and you just can't see through the coal. You don't know who's doing what. And every now and then we'd have a belt that would give a little bit of problem. You had a tailpiece where that belt flipped around and ran out, and you're dumping coal and it's carrying it to the belt header, dumping it on the main belt. So you've got that belt. That thing's probably 2,000 feet long if you double that thing. And if you get a roller out, you've got belt rollers. If a rock hits one and knocks one a little bit sideways, if they do that sometime, then your belt starts to ride up on one side or the other. You'll probably have that problem out there. Hey, you get these things out of line, these belts out of line, and you're going to start dumping things off. And so I had to have somebody to clean that tailpiece. One of the places that got dirtiest was where it flipped. Had a tailpiece with a roller, and boy, but they got, hey, you get that belt running in cold, and you probably get a fire in a little while. That heat will cause that. Had an old man, and I always sent that old man down to clean that and take care of that tailpiece. I hated that with a passion. And somebody said, why'd you make that old man? He's almost retirement age. He was over 60. And I'd send him down there because I couldn't walk down there in that low cold, continually walking down there to check to make sure that tailpiece was clean. So I sent somebody down there that I could trust. And that's what he's talking about here. All right, now they're going to do the service. They're going to be a gift. You got to be careful how you treat a gift. He said to do the service of the children of Israel in the tabernacle of the congregation, to make an atonement for the children of Israel. What do? They're going to start that atonement. What did atonement start with? When you killed the animal, when you caught the blood, when you did all these things that were necessary, you had to take these first baby steps before you could get that blood into the Holy of Holies and get that on the mercy seat on the Day of Atonement. So they were to make atonement for individuals on a daily basis, and then once a year they made an atonement for the nation of Israel itself. He said that there be no plague among the children of Israel when the children of Israel come nigh to the sanctuary. So when they came into the sanctuary, well, God several times in the Old Testament sent plagues. He did that when they became disobedient to God. I remember when David numbered the people. God didn't tell him to number the people. He told him not to number the people. Why? Because God's victory was not going to be given credit to masses of military people. The credit's going to go to God. So he numbered them, and God sent a plague. God asked him, he said, I'm going to give you three choices. He said, he said, I'm going to do this, and one, I'm going to do that, and one, I'm going to do this. And David said, well, we just throw our hands. Two of them had to do with the enemy. One, the sword, and then two, them to be in labor under their enemies. Their enemies take over them. And the third was put them in the hand of God. And he said, well, God's more merciful. The plague started and 73,000 men died before they could ever stop that plague by disobedience. Now, notice what he said, that there be no plague. He's not talking about a natural plague. He's talking about something that is the chastening hand of God for disobedience, that God would send in among them. And he said, you don't want that. Look at verse 20. Moses and Aaron, all the congregation of the children of Israel did to the Levites according unto all that the Lord commanded. They did it minutely in detail. Every minute detail was done. Concerning the Levites, so the children of Israel unto them, verse 21, the Levites were purified. They washed their clothes. Aaron offered them as an offering before the Lord, and Aaron made an atonement for them for cleansing. And after that, when all this done, when the Levites in to do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation before Aaron and before his sons, as the Lord had commanded Moses concerning the Levites, so did they. For the first time now, they got this tabernacle not just set up and the priesthood set up, now it's working. Now that thing's working. I remember when they were building Walmart distribution out here, we had a man that came to church here over 6 months. And what he did, when they poured the concrete, there's 375,000 cubic yards of concrete in that parking lot and building. Massive. So they didn't bring in a truckload from concrete place over here and try to pour a little 12 patio. They came out there, I remember just mountains of gravel and sand, and they had their own mixing thing, and they did all that work. Well, a man out of Texas was one of them that came up here and laid concrete. He attended church faithfully for 6 months here, as long as he was here. That's 1.6 million cubic feet of floor space out here at Walmart distribution. Somebody said you can reach and touch the building and walk around it, and I forgot how far it was. And they said, well, how far was it if you didn't touch the building? Same distance. Big place. Put all that equipment in there. One day, for the first time, an order filling. They received that. They stocked that. The slaughter put it where it belonged. The forklift drivers brought them and put them down beside, and an order filler dropped the first thing on that line for the first time, and she was operational. It takes a long time. Well, one of the biggest plants I've ever seen in my life is the big Kia plant down here that's going toward Montgomery, Alabama, down there. It's on the right. Anybody ever seen that thing? Boy, let me tell you, it's a mile and something like I have never seen. And I thank God for that. You say that's a foreign company. That foreign company is using American labor, American parts, American everything. Thank God. Toyota up in Evansville, Indiana. Boy, they come down there, they're involved in the community. They put huge amounts of money in for parks and everything else up there. Start those people out $30 plus an hour to work for Toyota. And boy, you're talking about putting a lot of people to work. Thank God for it. Now, what they're going to do? It took a long time to build these things, but now she's building, and now she's working. Let's see if we got 5. We're going to finish this. Now, verse number 23, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, this is it that belongeth unto the Levites. From 20 and 5 years old and up, they shall go in to wait upon the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. For the first time at age 25. Now they went into the priesthood at age 20. But at age 25, they took those 5 years training these individuals. This was not OJT. The military got a lot of on-the-job training. Now the basic training, our cooks were OJT. That tells you what a mess the mess hall was in. We didn't have any idea how to cook for masses of people. So we got green beans that tasted like they'd just been dipped in hot water, potatoes that were still raw in the middle. Got all that good food coming over, right? Now, at 25, they began their actual work in tabernacle. Verse 25, and from the age of 50 years they shall cease waiting upon the service thereof, and shall serve no more. So for 25 to 50, they only served for 25 years. That's all they served. So we find this priesthood, and we found that these individuals served to 50 years of age. That's 8. They do 25 years of work, they stay 25 years at one place, now you get a retirement, right? What happened, they served only 25 years. Look at verse 26. But shall minister with their brethren in the tabernacle of the congregation to keep the charge, and shall do no service. Thus shalt thou do to the Levites touching their charge. Now, from 25 to 50, they worked. They killed the animals, they cleaned, they did everything that need to be done inside of there. At age 50, they took their hands completely off, but they weren't done. He put them in charge. He said they're not to put their hand to service. It was not their job at that particular time in their life to touch anything, to kill an animal, touch an animal, or do anything else. What they did, they took them, they were veterans. These individuals knew how to get that job done. And you've got 25 years old coming in and replacing them, and they took the oversight of that work. They retired from physical labor, and they were using their heads instead of their hands at that particular time to make it work. Listen, God does everything decently and in order. He did with this tabernacle. Now, we're going to deal with them again here in a few. Some of the feast hoods are getting ready to move out. They've got that thing operating. It's functional now, and it's working the way that it needs to be worked. And now God's pleased with what they did. Father, we love you. We thank you for the day. I pray, Father, you give us good morning this morning, and good night tonight. Lord, thank you for the book of Numbers. Thank you for the Bible. Lord, I believe what you put in there is as plain as the nose on our face, Lord, of how things ought to be done. And Lord, you set an example in the Old Testament. These things were done for our ensamples. You said, upon whom the end of the world has come. And I pray, Father, we would follow after them in their working suit. I know we're not priests or under a priesthood anymore, but the work of God continues the same way. Pray you bless the service to come and give us good that day. In Jesus' name we pray.